There is a quiet tragedy happening in the lives of millions of people right now, and almost no one is talking about it. It is not poverty. It is not failure. It is not even loss. It is something far more dangerous because you cannot see it from the outside. The tragedy is this. Most people are spending their entire lives pretending to be someone they are not, and by the time they realize it, half their life is already gone. Think about that. Half a life, half a story, half a man, half a woman, walking around inside a costume they did not choose, performing a role they did not write, chasing approval from people whose opinions will not matter 10 years from now. And the worst part is not even that they are pretending. The worst part is that they have pretended for so long, they no longer remember who they were before the pretending began. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you did something simply because it was true to you? Not because it would impress someone, not because it would earn approval, not because it would fit in, but because it was honestly, deeply, unapologetically you. If you have to think hard to remember, that is the warning. That is the signal. That is the moment your soul is trying to get your attention. Here is the truth most people ignore. The world does not need another copy. The world is already drowning in copies. Copies of trends, copies of opinions, copies of lives lived by people who are also copying someone else. What the world is starving for is the real you, the original. The one who is placed here with a unique combination of gifts, scars, voice, vision, and purpose that has never existed before and will never exist again after you are gone. And every day you spend pretending to be someone else, you are robbing the world of the only thing it actually needed from you. Now listen carefully. This is not a soft message. This is not a gentle reminder. This is a wake-up call. Because pretending is not just inconvenient. It is expensive. It costs you your energy. It costs you your peace. It costs you your relationships. It costs you your time. And eventually, it costs you the one thing no one can ever return to you, which is the life you were supposed to live. So today we are going to do something different. Today we are going to stop pretending. Today we are going to look honestly at what it means to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you into something else. And by the end of this, if you listen carefully and you take it personally, you will walk away with a clarity that most people never find in a lifetime. Let me tell you something important. Being yourself is not a personality trait. It is a discipline. It is a daily decision. It is one of the hardest things any human being will ever do because the pressure to conform is constant and the rewards for conforming look very attractive from the outside. But understand this deeply. Every reward you receive for being someone you are not is a debt you will pay with your soul later. And that debt always comes due. Always. Let me share something with you that Jim Rohn used to say. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Think about that slowly. Because most people have it exactly backwards. They work 8, 10, 12 hours on their job, building someone else's dream, polishing someone else's image, performing someone else's expectations. And then they come home exhausted with nothing left for themselves, nothing left to think, nothing left to grow, nothing left to become. And they wonder why their life feels empty even when their schedule is full. Here is the hard truth. You cannot become yourself by accident. You cannot stumble into authenticity. You cannot discover who you really are by following the crowd. The crowd will lead you exactly where everyone else is going, and most of the time, that is nowhere worth arriving. To become who you really are, you have to do something the crowd will never do. You have to stop. You have to think. You have to listen to the quiet voice underneath all the noise. And then you have to act on what you hear, even when no one understands, even when no one approves, even when no one applauds. Now let's go deeper. The danger of pretending and losing yourself. Every time you pretend, something inside you dies a little. You may not notice it at first. The first time you laughed at a joke that was not funny because you wanted to fit in, you barely felt anything. The first time you nodded along to an opinion you did not believe because you did not want to start an argument, it was just easier. The first time you said yes when your whole body was saying no, you told yourself it was just this once. But the problem with pretending is that it never stays small. It grows. It compounds. It becomes a second skin, then a second identity, and finally, a prison. Imagine two people. One of them spends every day asking, what do other people want me to be? The other one spends every day asking, who am I and what am I called to do? 10 years pass. The first person is exhausted, confused, and surrounded by relationships that feel hollow because they were built on a version of themselves that was never real. The second person may have fewer friends, may have taken longer to find their path, may have looked strange to outsiders, but they are alive. They are awake. They are themselves. And that is the difference between a life consumed and a life lived. Let me ask you something honestly. How many years of your life have you already given to people whose names you will not even remember at the end? How many opinions have you absorbed that were never even yours? How many dreams have you abandoned because someone else laughed at them? How many versions of yourself have you murdered to make other people comfortable? Think about that. because every one of those losses was a payment, and the bill is still being added up. Now understand this deeply. Pretending feels safe in the moment because it lowers the temperature. It reduces conflict. It earns you approval. But pretending is one of the most dangerous addictions on earth because the reward is immediate and the cost is hidden. The cost shows up years later, in midlife crises, in quiet depressions, in the strange feeling that you have been successful at all the wrong things. The cost shows up in the mirror, when you see a face you do not recognize because the person living behind that face has been someone else for so long, they cannot remember who they were supposed to be. There is a moment in every person's life when they must decide, will I continue to live as a copy, or will I finally become the original I was created to be? That moment may come early, it may come late, but it always comes. And when it comes, the answer you give will determine everything that happens for the rest of your life. Here's what most people don't realize. The cost of pretending is not equal to the cost of being yourself. Pretending costs you your soul over a lifetime. Being yourself costs you a few uncomfortable conversations, a few lost approvals, a few changed relationships. Which one is the better deal? Which one is the smarter investment? Which one would the future version of you, the one looking back from your final years, beg you to choose? You already know the answer. The only question is whether you have the courage to live it. So let me say it clearly. Stop pretending. Stop performing. Stop softening yourself to make small people feel comfortable. Stop shrinking your vision to match the limits of people who never tried. Stop apologizing for the size of your dreams. Stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand. Because every minute you spend pretending is a minute stolen from the life you were actually born to live. Freedom from other people's opinions. Now let's talk about something that holds more people prisoner than any chain, any cage, any wall ever built in human history. The opinion of other people. Think about how strange this is. We are afraid of something we cannot see. We are controlled by something we cannot touch. We are governed by something most of the people whose opinion we fear are not even consciously holding. Half the people you are trying to impress are not thinking about you at all. They are too busy worrying about who is impressed by them. Let that sink in. The prison most people live in does not have walls. It does not have bars. It has glances. It has whispers. It has imagined judgments that may not even exist. And inside that invisible prison, people sentence themselves to a life of smallness, mediocrity, and quiet desperation. They will not start the business because of what people might say. They will not leave the relationship because of what people might think. They will not pursue the dream because of what people might assume. And so the years pass, and the dream dies, and the prison sentence becomes a life sentence, and the prisoner forgets they were the one holding the key the entire time. Here is something powerful. Most of the opinions you fear come from people whose own lives are not working. Read that again. The people most willing to criticize your dreams are almost always the people who quit on theirs. The people most willing to mock your ambition are almost always the people who let their ambition die quietly years ago. The people most willing to discourage you are almost always the people who needed someone to encourage them and never got it. So now they pass on the same poison they were poisoned with. Now ask yourself, why would you let people who are not even winning the game of their own lives write the rules for how you play yours? Why would you trade the highest, freest, most authentic version of you for the approval of people who would not even know what to do with the gift you were called to give the world? This is one of the most foolish trades in human existence, and almost everyone makes it. Let me tell you something Jim Rohn used to teach. The walls of a man's life expand or contract in direct proportion to his courage to face other people's opinions. The person who needs approval from everyone cannot lead, cannot create, cannot innovate, cannot serve. Because every original act, every creative leap, every meaningful contribution to the world begins with someone willing to disappoint someone else. That is the price of greatness. That is the cost of authenticity. That is the toll on the road to becoming yourself. Here's the truth. You will be criticized, whether you live boldly or live small. You will be judged, whether you chase the dream or abandon it. You will be misunderstood, whether you stay silent or speak the truth. So if criticism is unavoidable, which would you rather be criticized for? Living as a copy of someone you were not, or living as the original you were called to be? The answer should be obvious. The pain of being yourself and being misunderstood is finite. The pain of pretending and being approved of is endless. Most people versus successful people. Most people organize their lives around minimizing disapproval. Successful people organize their lives around maximizing alignment with their purpose. That is a completely different operating system. Most people ask, what will they think of me? Successful people ask, am I being who I am supposed to be? Most people end the day exhausted from performing. Successful people end the day exhausted from creating. Both are tired, but only one is moving forward. Now listen carefully. Freedom from other people's opinions is not arrogance. It is not coldness. It is not indifference. It is something far more powerful. It is the deep settled knowing that you have one life, one purpose, one mission, and one audience that ultimately matters, which is your own conscience and whatever higher principle you serve. When you live for that audience, the noise of the crowd fades into the background. Not because you stopped caring about people, but because you started caring about something bigger than their approval. Imagine waking up tomorrow and not caring whether anyone agreed with your vision. Imagine making a decision without first running it through the filter of what other people might say. Imagine speaking your truth without rehearsing how it would sound to people who would never have the courage to speak theirs. That is what it means to be free. That is what it means to be alive. That is what it means to finally become yourself. And here's the part no one tells you. When you stop seeking approval, you start receiving respect. Because the world unconsciously respects what it cannot manipulate. The world unconsciously honors what it cannot control. The moment you stop dancing to everyone else's music and start composing your own, you become magnetic. Not because you are trying to be magnetic, but because authenticity is the rarest currency in a world of imitations. People are drawn to the real. People are starving for the real. And when you become the real, they will come. But understand this, you cannot fake authenticity. You cannot strategize sincerity. You cannot perform genuineness. The moment you turn being yourself into a performance, you are pretending again, just with a new costume. The point is not to look authentic. The point is to be it, quietly, daily, repeatedly, in small choices and large ones, in what you say yes to and what you say no to, in what you build and what you refuse to build. That is the work. That is the discipline. That is the path. Self-awareness as the path to authenticity. Here is something important. You cannot be yourself if you do not know yourself. And most people do not know themselves. They know their roles. They know their job titles. They know what they tell other people at parties. But the deep self, the real self, the self underneath the labels and the expectations and the borrowed beliefs, that self is a stranger to most people. They have lived inside their own minds for 30, 40, 50 years and never once sat down to ask, who am I really underneath all of this? Think about that carefully. You will spend more time with yourself than with anyone else who will ever exist. You will be present at every single moment of your own life, from beginning to end. You will hear every thought you ever think. You will feel every emotion you ever feel. And yet, most people are strangers to the very person they spend the most time with. They know more about their favorite celebrity than they do about themselves. They know more about their company's mission than they do about their own. This must change, because self-awareness is the soil in which authenticity grows. Without it, you are just guessing. You are just reacting. You are just performing whatever role the environment calls for. With it, you become rooted. You become grounded. You become unshakable. And that grounding is the foundation for every meaningful life that has ever been lived. So how do you become self-aware? It begins with stillness, with silence, with the willingness to sit alone, without distraction, and listen. In a world designed to keep you noisy, choosing silence is an act of rebellion. In a world designed to keep you reactive, choosing reflection is an act of courage. In a world designed to keep you consuming, choosing contemplation is an act of liberation. Most people will not do this. They will keep filling every empty moment with sound, with screens, with stimulation, because the silence terrifies them. The silence forces them to meet themselves, and they have spent a lifetime avoiding that meeting. But you are not most people. You are listening to this because something inside you is tired of running. Something inside you is ready to sit. Something inside you wants the truth, even if the truth is uncomfortable. So sit, be still. Ask the questions most people never dare to ask. Who am I? What do I actually believe? What do I actually want? What am I afraid of? What am I avoiding? What would I do if no one was watching and no one would ever know? The answers will not come all at once, but they will come if you keep showing up to the silence. Here's something powerful. Self-awareness is uncomfortable at first because it requires you to admit the things you have been hiding from yourself. The cowardice you dressed up as caution. The laziness you called patience. The envy you disguised as opinion. The fear you mistook for wisdom. You will not enjoy meeting all the parts of yourself, but you cannot become whole until you meet all of yourself. The light and the dark. The strength and the weakness. The truth and the lies you have been telling. The integration of all of it is what authenticity actually is. Now understand this deeply. People who pretend cannot grow. They cannot grow because growth requires honest assessment, and pretending is built on the avoidance of honest assessment. If you cannot tell yourself the truth about where you are, you cannot chart a path to where you want to go. If you cannot admit your weakness, you cannot work on it. If you cannot name your fear, you cannot face it. Self-awareness is not just nice to have. It is the precondition for every transformation that is possible for you. Let me tell you something the world will never tell you. The most powerful person in any room is not the loudest. It is not the richest. It is not the most credentialed. The most powerful person in any room is the one who has done the deepest work on themselves. The one who has met their shadow and integrated it. The one who has named their fears and walked through them. The one who has stopped performing for the room and started being themselves in the room. That person carries an authority that cannot be faked because it is not based on what they have. It is based on who they have become. So begin the work. Begin the unglamorous, slow, lifetime work of getting to know the person you have been avoiding. Journal, reflect, ask hard questions, and let the answers take time. Notice the gap between who you say you are and who you actually behave as. Notice the gap between what you claim to value and what you actually spend your time and money on. Those gaps are not failures. They are information. They are the map of where the growth needs to happen. And once you can see the gaps, you can finally begin to close them. Courage to be different. Now let me say something that is going to feel uncomfortable, but it must be said. The path of being yourself will require you to disappoint people. Read that again. Disappoint people. And not just any people. Sometimes the people closest to you. Sometimes the people who love you most. Sometimes the people who have invested in the version of you that they were comfortable with. Because the moment you start becoming who you really are, you will outgrow some of the roles you have been playing. And not everyone will be ready for the new version of you. This is one of the most painful parts of the journey, and it stops more people than any other obstacle. They will get to the edge of becoming themselves, and then they will think about their mother or their father or their friends or their partner or their community, and they will pull back. They will think, who am I to change? Who am I to grow beyond what they expected of me? Who am I to want something more? And in that moment, they will shrink themselves back down to the size they were before, and they will tell themselves it was the loving thing to do. But here's the truth. Shrinking yourself is not love. Pretending to be small so other people do not feel small is not love. Lying about who you are so others can be comfortable in their illusions is not love. That is not love. That is fear wearing love's clothing. Real love wants the highest version of the other person, even when that version is intimidating. Real love celebrates growth, even when it brings change. And the people who truly love you, when they see the real you, even if it takes them time to adjust, will eventually embrace the version of you that you were always meant to be. Now listen carefully. The courage to be different is not about being different for the sake of being different. It is not about rebellion. It is not about contrarianism. It is not about shocking people. True courage is much quieter than that. It is the courage to walk your own path even when the path is unmarked. It is the courage to value your own evaluation more than the crowd's. It is the courage to live by principles even when no one is checking. It is the courage to say no to good opportunities because they are not the right opportunities for you. It is the courage to leave the room when staying in the room would mean betraying yourself. Imagine two men. One of them is wildly successful by every external measure, but secretly miserable because his success was built on becoming what other people wanted him to be. The other has less by external measures, but every day he wakes up and recognizes the person in the mirror. Every day he goes to bed knowing he lived in alignment with who he is. Every day his soul is at peace because there is no gap between his outside and his inside. Which man is actually rich? Which man is actually winning? That is the difference. That is the price. That is the choice every one of us must make. Here is something Jim Rohn understood deeply. The price of being different is paid in the short term. The price of being like everyone else is paid in the long term. Read that again. The short-term cost of authenticity feels heavy. The long-term cost of conformity is devastating. People will judge you for a few months. People will whisper for a few years. But you have to live with yourself forever. And the version of you at the end of your life, looking back, will not care about the whispers. It will only care about whether you lived as yourself or whether you wasted the gift. So decide. Decide that you would rather be misunderstood while being real than be understood while being fake. Decide that you would rather be criticized for your truth than celebrated for your lie. Decide that you would rather walk a lonely road in the right direction than a crowded road in the wrong one. Because here is what the years will teach you. The crowded road is not actually crowded. Everyone on it is also alone, hiding inside their own performance, waiting for someone brave enough to be real. And here's the secret. The moment you decide to be different, you start to find your real people. Not the people who liked your performance, the people who recognize your truth. Not the people who agreed with the version of you that was easy to predict. The people who are drawn to the version of you that is honest, unfinished, evolving. These are your tribe. These are the people you were meant to walk with, and you will not find them by pretending. You will only find them by being yourself loud enough and long enough that they can finally see you across the crowd. becoming the best version of yourself. Now let's talk about what this all leads to. Because being yourself is not the destination. Being yourself is the foundation. The destination is becoming the best version of yourself, which is something you cannot do until you have stopped pretending to be someone you are not. Read that again. You cannot grow into your highest self while you are still occupying the costume of someone else's self. The pretending must end before the becoming can begin. You must first take off the masks. Then you can begin to build the face. Here is the truth most people don't realize. Becoming the best version of yourself is not about adding things to who you are. It is about removing what is not you. It is about stripping away the layers of borrowed identity, borrowed beliefs, borrowed dreams, borrowed fears, until what remains is the original you. And then it is about taking that original and developing it, disciplining it, refining it, strengthening it, day by day, year by year, decade by decade, until you become the fullest expression of what was always inside you from the beginning. Think about a sculptor working with a block of marble. The sculptor does not add to the marble. The sculptor removes. Chip by chip, the unnecessary stone falls away, and what was hidden inside is revealed. That is the process of becoming yourself. You are not becoming someone new. You are revealing someone who was always there, buried under the marble of expectations, comparisons, fears, and the noise of a world that wanted you to be smaller than you are. Now understand this deeply. The world does not need a louder version of you trying to be someone else. The world needs the quiet, original, fully developed version of you doing what only you can do. There is a contribution that only you can make. There is a voice that only you can offer. There is a problem in the world that only your unique combination of experiences, gifts, and perspective is qualified to solve. And every day you spend pretending to be someone else is a day that contribution does not happen. That voice is not heard. That problem remains unsolved. That is the real cost. Not just to you, to the world. Because when you withhold the real you are not just hurting yourself. You are denying everyone who needed exactly what you were carrying. The student who needed your story, the friend who needed your honesty, the stranger who needed your courage, the reader who needed your words, the child who needed your example. Every single one of them suffers when you choose to be a copy instead of the original you were meant to be. So here is the reframe. Being yourself is not selfish. Pretending is selfish. Because when you pretend, you take up space that belongs to your authentic contribution. When you pretend, you crowd out the real you that the world is waiting for. When you pretend, you become one more person adding to the noise of imitation instead of someone adding to the chorus of truth. The most generous thing you can do for the people in your life is to stop pretending around them. Let them see you. Let them know you. Let them be challenged and changed by the realness of who you actually are. Here's the hard truth. The best version of yourself is not an arrival. It is a direction. You will never be done. There will never be a day when you wake up and say, I have completed becoming myself. The journey is the destination. The unfolding is the point. The willingness to keep stripping away what is not you and developing what is, day after day, year after year, is what it means to live a fully alive life. Most people stop the work after a few attempts. The ones who keep going are the ones who become extraordinary. Not because they were given more, but because they refuse to settle for less than their real self. Let me tell you something Jim Rohn often said. The major value in life is not what you get. The major value is what you become. Think about that slowly. Because most people are focused on accumulation, more money, more possessions, more achievements, more recognition. And there is nothing wrong with these things in their proper place. But if you spend your life accumulating things while neglecting to become someone, you will arrive at the end with full hands and an empty soul. The things will be left behind. The becoming will be yours forever. Now understand this deeply. The work of becoming yourself is the work of a lifetime, but it pays compound interest. Every honest conversation you have, every authentic decision you make, every moment you choose alignment over approval, deposits a little bit of strength into the account of who you are becoming. Over time, those deposits add up to something extraordinary. A person of substance, a person of presence, a person whose word can be trusted because their inside matches their outside, a person other people are drawn to because they can sense the integration, the wholeness, the realness. And this is the kind of person who changes things, who builds things, who leads things, not because they are louder or smarter or more talented than everyone else, but because they have done the inner work most people refuse to do. They have become themselves. And from that solid foundation, they can serve the world in a way that scattered, pretending people never can. The final commitment, bringing it all together. So here we are, at the end of the message. But for you, hopefully, at the beginning of something much bigger. Because the message means nothing unless it changes how you live tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Unless this becomes a turning point, it becomes just one more piece of inspiration that came and went, like the dozens before it. So let me ask you honestly, what are you going to do with this? Are you going to close the video, feel inspired for an hour, and then go back to performing the same costume you have been wearing? Or are you going to make a decision right now that something is going to be different from this moment forward? Because the decision is everything. The decision changes the trajectory. The decision is the seed from which the new life will grow. Here is what I want you to do. Today, this week, in the next 30 days, find one place in your life where you have been pretending. Just one. Maybe it is a relationship where you have been agreeing to things you do not actually agree with. Maybe it is a job where you have been performing a personality that is not yours. Maybe it is a friendship where you have been laughing at things that are not actually funny to you. Maybe it is a belief you say you hold, but do not actually live by. Find one place, and in that one place, choose the harder truth instead of the easier lie. That is where it begins. Not in some grand transformation, not in some dramatic announcement, just in one small, quiet, brave choice to be honest where you have been pretending, and then another, and then another. And before you know it, the pretending starts falling off you like old skin. And what remains underneath is something more solid, more honest, more powerful, more yours than anything you have ever known. Now listen carefully. The world is going to keep pulling you back. The pressure to perform, to conform, to please, to fit in is not going to disappear because you made a decision. It will get stronger at first because the systems and relationships in your life were built around the old you, and they will resist the change. Expect this. Plan for this. Do not be surprised when it happens. The resistance is not a sign you are on the wrong path. It is a sign you are finally on the right one. Stay the course. Stay disciplined. Stay quiet about the work. You do not need to announce your becoming. You do not need to explain your transformation. You do not need to defend your changes. Just live them. Live them so consistently, so quietly, so undeniably, that over time the truth of who you are becomes impossible to argue with. The people who matter will see it. The people who do not will fall away. And both of those outcomes are exactly what you need. Here is the closing truth. You will not regret becoming yourself. You will only regret the years you spent pretending. You will not regret the people who walked away because of your authenticity. You will only regret the people you let walk away from your authentic self because you were too afraid to show it. You will not regret the road less traveled. You will only regret the road you took because everyone else was on it. So decide. Decide today. Decide that the pretending ends here. Decide that the costume comes off here. Decide that the performance is over here. Decide that from this moment forward, you will be the most honest version of you that you have ever been, and that every day you will become a little more so, and that you will not apologize for it, and you will not explain it, and you will not negotiate it away to make small people comfortable. Because in the end, this is what life was for. Not to be a copy, not to be a performance, not to be a costume worn for the comfort of strangers. Life was for becoming. Life was for unfolding. Life was for revealing the original masterpiece that you have always been underneath the noise. And the only person who can do that work for you is you. No one is coming to do it. No one is going to give you permission. No one is going to hand you a manual. You have to choose it. You have to walk it. You have to live it. So stop pretending. Stop hiding. Stop shrinking. Stop apologizing for taking up the exact amount of space you were meant to take up. Stop softening your truth to make untruth feel safer. Stop dimming your light to keep dim people comfortable. Stop. Just stop. And in that stopping, in that pause, in that decision, something quiet and powerful begins to happen inside you. The real you starts to stir. The real you starts to wake up. The real you starts to remember. And remember this, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Work harder on becoming who you are than on becoming who they want you to be. Work harder on the inner life than on the outer image, because the inner life is the source of everything. The outer image is the shadow. Tend to the source, and the shadow takes care of itself. Neglect the source, and no amount of polishing the shadow will ever make you whole. Your life is happening right now, not someday, not when conditions are perfect, not when everyone approves, right now. And the version of you that exists in this moment is the only version that gets to make the decisions that shape every version that comes after. Make those decisions count. Make them honest. Make them yours. Make them the kind of decisions the future you, looking back from your final years, will thank you for. Because the future you is already there, in some sense, waiting to see what you choose, waiting to see if you finally became yourself, or if you spent another decade hiding, waiting to see if you finally stood up, or if you stayed seated for the comfort of the room, waiting to see if you finally let the world see the real you, or if you took the real you with you, unused, unrevealed, unrealized, into the silence at the end. Do not take the real you with you. Spend it, Live it, risk it, give it. Let the world see it, criticize it, misunderstand it, embrace it, be changed by it. That is what you are here for, not to protect the gift, to deliver it. So go, be yourself. Not because it is easy, not because it is rewarded, not because it is approved, but because it is true. And nothing in life that is worth anything has ever been built on something less than the truth of who you really are. Stop pretending, stop performing, stop hiding, and become. Become quietly, become daily, become unstoppably. Because the world has enough copies. What the world is waiting for is you.